My mother-in-law said, "You're a terrible mother." I smiled. "We'll see." I showed the DNA test. The child wasn't mine. Her face turned pale as I left, leaving her with the truth. So, let me tell you about the most insane 3 months of my life and how one DNA test completely flipped my world upside down. This story still gives me chills, and honestly, I'm still processing everything that went down. It all started back in February when my husband Jake got that phone call. You know, the kind, middle of the night, bad news incoming. His sister Emma had been in a car accident and she was in bad shape. Real bad. The doctors weren't sure she was going to make it, and she had this little 2-year-old daughter, Lily, who needed someone to take care of her, while Emma fought for her life in the ICU. Jake and I had been married for about 4 years at that point, and we'd been trying to have kids ourselves without any luck. When he asked if we could take Lily in temporarily, I didn't even hesitate. This little girl needed us, and honestly, part of me was excited to finally have a child in our house, even if it wasn't under the best circumstances. Emma pulled through after about a week in the hospital, but the recovery was going to be long. She had multiple surgeries ahead of her, months of physical therapy, and couldn't take care of Lily on her own. So we all agreed that Lily would stay with us until Emma got back on her feet. What I thought would be a few weeks turned into months, and before I knew it, I was basically this kid's mom in every way that mattered. And let me tell you, I threw myself into that role like it was my calling. I'm talking Disney World trips, dance classes, bedtime stories every single night. I bought her this little pink bedroom set from Pottery Barn Kids that cost more than my car payment. I learned to braid hair watching YouTube videos at 2 a.m. I became the mom who shows up to preschool pickup with homemade snacks and knows all the other kids' names. Lily started calling me mama after about 6 weeks, and my heart just melted every single time. Jake would come home from work to find us having tea parties or building blanket forts, and he'd get this look on his face like we were his whole world. For the first time in our marriage, we felt like a real family. But here's where things get interesting. My mother-in-law, Patricia, was not having any of this domestic bliss. From day one, she made it clear that she thought I was overstepping. She'd make these little comments whenever she came over like, "Don't get too attached," or "Remember, she's not really yours." At first, I thought she was just looking out for everyone's feelings, making sure I didn't get hurt when Lily eventually went back to Emma. But as the weeks went on, Patricia's comments got nastier. She started critiquing everything I did with Lily, the way I dressed her, the food I gave her, the bedtime routine I'd established. She'd undermine me in front of other family members, saying things like, "Well, she's not really Lily's mother," whenever I'd share a cute story or milestone. The breaking point came in early May. I'd taken Lily to her cousin's birthday party, and she got into a little scuffle with another kid over a toy. Normal toddler stuff, right? But Patricia witnessed it and completely lost her mind. In front of the entire family gathering, she pointed her finger at me and said, "You're a terrible mother. You can't even control a child that isn't even yours." The whole backyard went silent, like you could hear a pin drop. Everyone was staring, and I felt this heat rush to my face. But instead of getting upset or defensive, something weird happened. I just smiled. This calm, knowing smile that I couldn't explain in that moment. "We'll see about that," I said, and walked away to get Lily cleaned up. Update. You guys, the comments on this are wild. Someone asked if I suspected something was up before the DNA test. Honestly, looking back, there were little things that didn't add up, but I was so focused on taking care of Lily that I didn't connect the dots until later. Should I have confronted Patricia differently? Part of me wonders what would have happened if I'd handled that moment at the party another way. That night, I couldn't sleep. Patricia's words kept playing in my head, but not in the way you'd expect. It wasn't the terrible mother part that bothered me, it was something else she'd said. A child that isn't even yours. The way she emphasized it, like she knew something. I didn't. I started thinking about some weird things I'd noticed over the past few months, like how Lily had these bright green eyes that didn't match anyone in Emma's family, or how she was left-handed when everyone else in the family was right-handed. Little details that seemed insignificant at the time. But the thing that really got me thinking was something Jake had mentioned in passing a few weeks earlier. He'd said something about how Lily looked just like his dad did as a kid, and Patricia had gotten this weird look on her face and quickly changed the subject. The more I thought about it, the more pieces started falling into place. Patricia's strange behavior, her constant comments about how I wasn't Lily's real mother, the way she'd get uncomfortable whenever anyone mentioned family resemblances. So I did something that might sound crazy, but hear me out. I decided to get a DNA test done. Not because I didn't trust Emma, but because something in my gut was telling me there was more to this story. Getting the test wasn't easy. I had to wait until Jake was at work and take Lily to one of those private labs across town. I told them I was doing a family tree project, which wasn't entirely a lie. I used a home kit for myself and had them do a proper lab test for Lily. Then I waited. Those 2 weeks waiting for results were torture. I kept going back and forth between thinking I was being paranoid and feeling like I was onto something huge. Jake noticed I was acting weird, but I just told him I was stressed about work. When the results came back, I literally had to sit down. I opened that email in my car in the parking lot of a Target, and I swear my hands were shaking so bad I could barely scroll down to see the numbers. The test confirmed what my gut had been telling me. Lily and I shared 50% of our DNA. She wasn't Emma's daughter, she was mine. I sat in that parking lot for probably an hour, just staring at my phone. My mind was racing through every possible explanation, and none of them made sense. How could Lily be my biological daughter? I'd never been pregnant. I'd never given birth. I'd never even been with anyone other than Jake. Then it hit me like a freight train. The fertility clinic. Jake and I had done IVF about 3 years ago. We'd gone through the whole process, hormone shots, egg retrieval, the works. We'd made several embryos, but the implantation had failed. The doctor had told us that our remaining embryos weren't viable, and we'd moved on to try other options. But what if they'd lied? What if our embryos had been viable and they'd used one of them for someone else? What if Emma had unknowingly been implanted with my biological child? Update. Holy crap, you guys are blowing up my notifications. A lot of you are asking about the fertility clinic and whether this kind of mix-up actually happens. Unfortunately, it does. I've been doing research since this all went down, and there have been several cases of clinics mixing up embryos or using the wrong samples. It's rare, but not unheard of. Someone asked about Emma's reaction. I haven't told her yet, and that's honestly the part I'm dreading most. I spent the next few days in this weird fog, trying to figure out what to do with this information. I couldn't just walk up to Emma and be like, "Hey, surprise! That kid you've been raising for 2 years is actually mine." The woman had just been through a traumatic accident and was still recovering, but I also couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. Every time I looked at Lily, I saw myself in her features that I'd somehow missed before. The way she wrinkled her nose when she laughed, exactly like I do. The stubborn cowlick in her hair that matches mine perfectly. I decided I needed to confront the fertility clinic first. I made an appointment with Dr. Martinez, the same doctor who'd handled our IVF process. I walked into that office with a folder full of documents, the DNA test results, my medical records, everything. Dr. Martinez's face went white when I showed him the test results. He started stammering about how this was impossible, how they had strict protocols in place. But then he excused himself and came back with another doctor and what looked like a lawyer. They asked me to sign a confidentiality agreement before they'd discuss anything further. That's when I knew I had them. They explained that there had been a clerical error during the time of our treatment. Our embryo, which they'd told us wasn't viable, had actually been healthy and had been mistakenly used for another patient. That patient was Emma. They offered me a settlement, a big one, to keep quiet about the whole thing, but I wasn't interested in money. I wanted to know how this had happened and what they were going to do to make sure it never happened again. The lawyer explained that Emma had also been going through fertility treatments at the same time as us. She'd been having trouble conceiving after a previous miscarriage, and when their procedures succeeded, everyone just assumed it was her genetic material that had worked. The clinic had realized their mistake about a year later during a routine audit, but by then, Emma was already several months pregnant. They'd made the decision not to tell anyone, figuring it would cause more harm than good. I left that meeting feeling like my whole world had been turned upside down. I had a biological daughter I'd been raising without knowing it, a sister-in-law who had no idea she'd been carrying my child, and a mother-in-law who somehow knew more than she was letting on. That's when I decided to have a conversation with Patricia. I invited her over for coffee the next day, making sure Jake was at work and Lily was at preschool. I had all my documentation ready, but I wanted to see what she'd say first. "Patricia," I said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you know something about Lily's parentage that you haven't shared?" The woman literally went pale. She started fidgeting with her coffee cup and wouldn't make eye contact with me. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice was shaking. "I think you do," I said calmly. "I think you've known for a while that Lily isn't biologically Emma's daughter." That's when she broke down. Turns out Patricia had been the one to accompany Emma to some of her fertility appointments. She'd overheard a conversation between two nurses about a mix-up with embryos, but she'd never said anything because she didn't want to upset Emma during her pregnancy. But she'd put 2 and 2 together when Lily started showing features that didn't match anyone in Emma's family. She'd suspected for months that Lily might be Jake's biological child, but she'd assumed Jake had cheated on me, not that there'd been a medical mix-up. That's why she'd been so hostile toward me. She thought I was raising the child of my husband's affair and that I was too naive to realize it. She'd been trying to protect me in her own twisted way by making sure I didn't get too attached. "I thought if I could make you see that she wasn't really yours, it would hurt less when the truth came out," she admitted through tears. I showed her the DNA test results and explained about the fertility clinic mix-up. Patricia just stared at the papers for the longest time, and then she looked up at me with this expression I'd never seen before. "You mean she really is yours?" she whispered. "Biologically, yes," I said. "But the situation is a lot more complicated than that." Update. You guys are amazing with all the support and advice. Someone asked what my next steps are legally. I've actually consulted with a family law attorney, and the situation is incredibly complex. Technically, Emma is Lily's legal mother since she gave birth to her and is on the birth certificate, but I'm the biological mother due to the clinic's error. The lawyer says cases like this have gone different ways in different states. For now, I'm focusing on what's best for Lily rather than what's best for me legally. The hardest conversation was still ahead of me. I had to tell Emma. I waited until she was feeling stronger, about a week after my talk with Patricia. I drove over to her apartment with a knot in my stomach the size of a basketball. How do you even start a conversation like that? Emma was doing better physically, but she was obviously struggling with being separated from Lily for so long. She kept talking about how excited she was to have her daughter back home soon, and every word felt like a knife in my chest. I'd brought copies of all the documentation, the DNA test, the clinic's admission, everything. I sat her down on her couch and just laid it all out as gently as I could. Emma's reaction was not what I expected. She didn't cry or get angry or deny it. She just got very quiet and stared at the papers for a long time. I always wondered, she finally said. She doesn't look like me at all, and everyone kept saying how much she looked like Jake's side of the family. I just thought genetics were weird. Then she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Does this mean you're going to take her away from me? That question broke my heart. I realized that in all my focus on the legal and biological aspects of this situation, I hadn't really thought about what it meant for everyone involved emotionally. Emma, I said, you're her mom. You carried her, you gave birth to her, you've loved her since day one. A DNA test doesn't change that. But she's biologically yours, Emma said. You have more right to her than I do. Rights aren't what matter here, I told her. What matters is what's best for Lily. We talked for hours, that day. We cried, we laughed, we tried to figure out how to navigate this impossible situation. Emma admitted that she'd been struggling financially and emotionally since the accident, and she wasn't sure she was ready to take Lily back full-time anyway. That's when we came up with our arrangement. Emma would remain Lily's legal mother, but I would continue to be her primary caregiver. Emma would have her whenever she wanted, and we'd make decisions about Lily's upbringing together. Essentially, we'd co-parent, with the understanding that we both loved this little girl and wanted what was best for her. Jake was shocked when I finally told him everything, but he was incredibly supportive. He said he'd suspected something was off with his mother's behavior, but he'd never imagined anything like this. As for Patricia, she's been trying to make amends ever since she learned the truth. She's been apologizing constantly and trying to insert herself into Lily's care, but I've been keeping my distance. Her intentions might have been protective, but her actions caused a lot of unnecessary pain. The fertility clinic situation is still ongoing. My lawyer is handling that side of things, and there will probably be consequences for them beyond just the financial settlement they offered. But here's the crazy part. Through all of this chaos and confusion, I've never been happier. Lily is thriving in our house. She's got her own room, her routine, her favorite spot on the couch for movie nights. Emma comes over several times a week, and Lily lights up every time she sees her. We're like this weird, unconventional family unit, but it works. Jake and I have also started the adoption process. We want to legally formalize my relationship with Lily, with Emma's blessing. It's complicated because of the unusual circumstances, but our lawyer thinks we can make it work. The best part of this whole situation is watching Lily flourish. She's got 2 women who absolutely adore her, an uncle who spoils her rotten, and now even Patricia is coming around and admitting she was wrong about me being a terrible mother. Actually, that reminds me of something that happened just last week. Patricia was over for Sunday dinner, and Lily was showing off her latest artwork from preschool. Patricia looked at me and said, "You know, you really are wonderful with her." I was wrong to say what I said at that party. I smiled at her, the same calm smile I'd given her that day. I told you we'd see about that. The difference is, now I know exactly why I was so confident that day. Some part of me, some maternal instinct I didn't even know I had, was telling me that Lily was mine to protect and love. I couldn't explain it then, but now it all makes perfect sense. These days, when people ask me about our family situation, I just say that love makes a family, not genetics. Lily has a mom who carried her and gave birth to her, and she has a mom who's raising her day to day. She has 2 women who would do anything for her, and that's more than a lot of kids can say. Emma's getting stronger every week, and she's even started dating someone new, a physical therapist she met during her recovery. He's great with Lily and seems to understand our unique arrangement without any judgment. As for Jake and me, we've decided to try IVF again, but this time with a different clinic and a lot more questions about their protocols. Maybe Lily will have a little brother or sister someday. But even if it's just the 3 of us, I couldn't be happier with our little family. The DNA test that started all of this is still sitting in my desk drawer. Sometimes I look at it and can't believe how much our lives changed because of those numbers on a piece of paper. But then I hear Lily calling for me from her room, or I watch her and Emma reading together on the couch, and I realize that all the confusion and chaos was worth it to get to where we are now. Patricia still makes the occasional comment about the unconventional nature of our arrangement, but now it comes from a place of curiosity rather than judgment. And every time she sees how happy and well-adjusted Lily is, I can see her understanding a little more that families come in all shapes and sizes. The fertility clinic eventually reached a settlement with both Emma and me. The money will go into trust funds for Lily's future education and for Emma's ongoing medical expenses. More importantly, they've implemented new protocols to prevent this kind of mix-up from happening to other families. Looking back on that moment at the birthday party when Patricia called me a terrible mother, I realized it was the catalyst for everything that followed. If she hadn't pushed me to that breaking point, I might never have trusted my instincts enough to get that DNA test. I might have spent years raising my biological daughter without ever knowing the truth. Now, when Lily calls me mama and wraps her little arms around my neck, I know it's not just because I've been taking care of her. It's because, in the deepest sense, she really is mine, and I'm hers. The science just finally caught up with what our hearts already knew. The truth that I left Patricia with that day at the party wasn't the devastating revelation she thought it would be. It was the most beautiful truth I could have imagined, that the little girl I'd fallen in love with was mine all along, in every way that matters.